Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, July 17th special meeting of the Wall Township Board of Education. Please join me in the flag salute. Thank you. At this time, Mr. Smythe, will you please read the sunshine announcement and roll call?
This is the Wall Township Board of Education meeting for which adequate notice under the Open Public Meeting Act was provided by publication in the Co-Star, Asbury Park Press, written notice to the Township Clerk's Office, all Wall Township Public Schools, and a posting in the Board Administration Office on May 4th, 2023. Take a roll call. Mr. Anisio?
Here.
Mr. Buffer?
Here.
Ms. DiGiovanni?
Here.
Ms. Hodnett?
Here.
Mr. Maliv?
Here.
Mr. Nasser? Mr. Sanfilippo?
Here.
Mr. Wondrak?
Here.
Ms. Stites?
Here. Thank you. At this time, we're going to be opening the floor for public comment. If you'd like to make public comment, please come to the microphone.
Betsy Cross, I live in Wall Township. I noticed it's the second meeting that Mr. Nasser has missed, but you didn't say if it was an excused absence or an unexcused absence. If you could just let us know what that was so it's on the record and people know why he's not here. I guess you'll answer that at the end, Ms. Stites. It's either excused or unexcused. I'm sorry to hear that Heather Daniel is leaving. I saw that on tomorrow night's agenda. I wish her well, but I saw that on the agenda for tomorrow. What else? Glad to see that Mary Ann Friedman is here. I won't be able to stay for the presentation, but I'll watch it on the live stream. I did send in a request to Christine Stites, Tracy Handerhan, and Brian Smythe. None of them got back to me. The IT department did finally get back to me when I wrote them. So disappointing. You know, you really should reply to emails. Nobody answers the phone. Nobody replies to emails. The agenda didn't even have Ms. Friedman's name on it. So, you know, it's usually at the last minute, you know, you put things on there. Should have been up on Friday. What else? I see, I don't know if we're paying 4 people to be here tonight at a 2 or 4 hour minimum, but this is ridiculous. So we got 4 people over here in the IT department, or 5. Actually, we got 5 people over there. We shouldn't need 5 people to get a meeting going on a live stream. So I'm going to ask how much that is costing, because I think there's a minimum of either 2 hours or 4 hours, so that really adds up. So all for the kids, right? I did see you outsource my lawsuit. That's just really unbelievable. You had Mr. Nasser send an email December 1st. You had the from. It was to Tracy Handerhan from Adam Nasser. You had the name of the folder. It was FB, many assume is Facebook. You had the date it was sent in the minute, and Mr. Smythe said it was too vague. It's not too vague. Other people have contacted me. They said they put in the Oprah. He wrote back again, it's too vague. It's ridiculous. Stop wasting money and turn over the documents. You've asked for a 20-day extension from an attorney. It's ridiculous. So now we're paying 2 attorneys. Not only Athena Cornell, we're also paying your new law firm of Methesa something or other. Finally, the Navy letters came back. That was ridiculous. After extensions upon extensions of Brian Smythe. I can't even believe he's here. Has he been deposed yet on the trailers? That Long Island nut job, I think, murdered the first person in 2007, the same year the trailers. Hopefully we'll get to the truth on the trailers.
Your time is up.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. At this time, I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Handerhan, who's going to be introducing our special guest. for our special meeting this evening, a board retreat. So thank you, Dr. Handerhan.
Thank you, Ms. Stites. This evening, before we get started, I just wanted to share for those of you that may be watching our live stream or as a recording for a future date, I just want to really explain what this evening is. This evening is not a board meeting of which action will be taking place. This is a board retreat. This is similar to in scope and purpose to the workshop meetings that we have. For example, for those of you that are tune in regularly, we have had every year we have several budget workshop meetings where the board is assembled and it is a working meeting of the Board of Education. So the work is in public. I just want to give some more context. The Board of Education cannot meet as a whole or a quorum or more. That in our case, that would be 5 or more. We cannot meet in public without proper advertising because it is technically a Board of Education meeting. So when the board gets together to work on board business, it is necessary to advertise the meeting, and it is necessary to provide public access to the workings of the Board of Education. The presentations here this evening are intended for the Board of Education. I will share that there will, at each particular juncture of tonight, we will provide information on the website because, you know, there's some exciting things on our agenda this evening. Without any further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our New Jersey School Board Association field representative, Ms. Marianne Friedman. Ms. Friedman, she has been with us, I believe it was in January or February. You were here last, really providing us professional development on school board ethics. And this evening, she is here to present on board effectiveness. So it's a great topic, especially as we are working on really the refinement of our strategic plan and wrapping up our district goals, which we'll hear more about this evening from Ms. McCann. So it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to Ms. Friedman. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Do I need, is this on again? Okay, sorry. All of a sudden it was very quiet. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to see everybody. You all look various stages of tan, which I am not. And so I hope you've had a chance to enjoy some of the summer weather. It's a little too hot for my liking, which is why I'm not in Florida anymore. But anyway, was going to talk to you guys tonight about board effectiveness, and you have the PowerPoint in your packet and on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, there's a bunch of items that I think you'll find useful and helpful in when you think about your boardsmanship and what your roles are and things like that. So without further ado, we'll get started because I know you have a busy night ahead of you. So we're going to talk a little bit about the agenda, about effective board leadership teams. We're going to talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities in general, what the board president's responsibilities are at meetings, and what the board members' responsibilities are at meetings. We'll also talk about meeting effectiveness and procedures, parliamentary procedures, Robert's rules, the chain of command, board member meeting responsibilities, communication, and then communication tips. So how do you recognize effective board leadership teams? Excuse me. The first thing is that they have a shared mission and vision that they refer to constantly and consistently. Thank you so much. It's been a terrible allergy season. So they have a shared mission and vision that they refer to constantly and consistently for guidance with whatever it is that they're working on and doing. They also work to maintain a climate of trust and openness among the board members and also among their community. The leadership team members understand and respect one another's roles and responsibilities. That's very important. Communication is honest and timely. The timely part is critical, and the honest part is critical, okay? Diversity of thought is seen as, I just lost my train of thought. Diversity of thought is seen as an asset, not a liability. Sometimes boards think of that diversity of thought as a liability because they're constantly getting into different conversations and maybe disagreements. But it really, if it's perceived as an asset, it really can take you and take any board to the next level. And then all members really do stay in touch with the notion of the greater good for all of their students. So the price of greatness really is responsibility, and that responsibility really starts and works with each one of you as individuals. Because as an entity, you all need to contribute your effectiveness to the board's ability to be effective together. So simply put, the role and the responsibility of the board is the what. You are the what people. You determine what it is you would like to see happen. And then the superintendent is the how person. She will decide how she's going to get you from point A to point B. And so I'm sure that when you review your strategic plan, you'll see that the strategic plan, the goals are the what. They're what people from your community and your stakeholder groups have put together through that strategic plan. And then I believe that Dr. Handerhan is going to put together the action plans for that. And that's going to show you how she's going to get from point A to point B. You don't want to have your hands in the how. You want to definitely have your hands and your opinions and your values in the what. In the how, if the board starts to dictate the how the superintendent's going to get you from point A to point B, you then can't evaluate the superintendent on those. You can evaluate her, but you can't hold her accountable for those things, because it has to be her plan, whether it works or whether it doesn't work. And then she needs to be able to, any superintendent needs to be able to describe how it worked or if it didn't work. And that's why sometimes action plans are changed across the course of the school year in order, if something doesn't work, then we may need to try something else. But the how belongs to the superintendent. And if the board steps in and says, we want you to do it this way, you can't hold the superintendent accountable in the evaluation that you do every spring. Okay, you have a setting the stage in your packet. It's readable in your packet. It's not really readable on the screen, which is why I always try and give you things that are readable in the packet when they're not necessarily. But this really speaks to the what and the how of 6 different areas: planning, program, personnel, finance, facilities, and communications. So if you're trying to figure out what it is your role is, you want to look at that first row underneath the blue area, and that tells you what it is you should be doing in those areas, and the how, the lower row, tells you what the superintendent's responsibility is in those. So the role of the board member, Dr. Handerhan already said that you have no legal status other than at a regularly advertised meeting with a quorum of the board, and that has to be a legally advertised meeting. And so that's from the Senator Byron Bayer Open Public Meetings Act, and you recite that Open Public Meetings Act piece at every meeting that you have. The next piece is that individual board members cannot make decisions for the full board. They can't take actions for the full board, and they can't speak for the full board unless the full board has authorized them to do so. So I always recommend that you check your policy and your bylaws on that. Typically, the board president is the spokesperson for the board, and the superintendent is the spokesperson for the district. Individual board members also, and as a board, you don't direct staff, you direct the superintendent. But as individuals, you don't direct staff. As individuals, you don't direct the superintendent. That comes from the board itself and your action items. So the role of the board really is not to run the schools, but to ensure that they are well run. And the way you do that, the board president presides at the meeting. They are the chair. They keep the order. They manage the meeting. They make sure that everybody who wants to speak has the opportunity to speak. Make sure that there's open and public dialogue, and uses the gavel as necessary. Most board presidents don't like to use the gavel so much, but sometimes it's necessary. They're also going to use parliamentary procedure to be able to help you to make sure that the protocols that are in place, because most boards do in their reorganization meeting say that they operate under parliamentary procedure. It ensures that the protocols are followed and also protects the rights of the minority. And it also protects the rights of those that are absent. And then public comment, the board president is the spokesperson for the board. They adhere to the approved bylaws and to your public comment section in your bylaws and in your policy. They would engage the superintendent and/or board members as appropriate We really recommend that there not be a dialogue back and forth when you have that open public comment section. It's the public's opportunity to provide you with information and make comments. It's not meant to be and has never really meant to be a question and answer period. Okay? A lot of times people may come to the podium and may have public comments that you haven't heard before as a body, as a board, and the superintendent or the BA may not have heard those things before either. So you want to be able to make sure that you're giving the superintendent and anybody else who may need to respond to that the opportunity to look into it and validate and verify what's going on before they get back to that individual. And in that case, the board president can say, thank you for your comments. Please make sure our business administrator has your contact information before you leave, and somebody from the district, either the superintendent or the business administrator, will respond. Usually 24 to 48 hours is a good rule of thumb. And then if the superintendent doesn't have the information to be able to respond, there is some kind of a investigation going on or research that's going on. Superintendent can call that individual and say, I'm still working on this. I don't have the answers to your questions, but I wanted you to know that I'm working on it. And that's how you keep that communication going and that dialogue going when it really shouldn't be happening at the board table with the public. And the board president really is helping to provide civility and professionalism at your meetings. A lot of times people think that the board meeting is the way the district is run, the way the board maintains itself and presents itself at a board meeting. If it's chaos, they feel that that's the way the district is being run and that things really aren't happening. So the more civil and professional board members can be at the table, the more civil and professional your community thinks and believes your school district is running. And we know for a fact that most of the time that perception is not always accurate, but it's the perception again. So a board member at meetings should be attending meetings. If they're unable to communicate to the board president or to the business administrator and let them know. Arrive on time whenever possible. Be prepared, having read through the agenda and the attachments prior to the meeting. I know and we know at New Jersey School Boards that this is not the only thing that you do in your lives. We really do know that. So we know that you have families that you're taking care of. You may have young children. You may have older family members that you're helping to take care of and care for, and that you probably have jobs, maybe one or two outside of your boardsmanship. So we know that sometimes these things are really difficult to do. But if you can get into some kind of a pattern, it can be helpful. I remember when I started on my board in 1999, I went to new school board member orientation. And in one of our small group sessions, the person who was the small group leader said that what she did was they got their packet on Friday night. Then we had paper packets. Remember, we didn't have electronic stuff at that point. So we had the paper packets that would be dropped off at our houses. And she said she would read through those as much as she could, get through the agenda, just to see if she had any questions that she needed to get asked of the superintendent, of the board president, or of any chair people. And then would follow up with that, and then would read the attachments on Sunday, and the board meeting was on Monday. And I tried to do that, and it worked out pretty well for me. There were some Sundays, if I was in the emergency room with my daughter, that I couldn't actually read the packet, although sometimes I took it with me if there was going to be a long wait, and if it wasn't, a life or death situation, that may seem a little outlandish. But, if you're sitting someplace and you have time, you may want to bring it with you so that you can look at those attachments, because sometimes the attachments have the answers to the questions that you may want to be asking of the agenda items. So if you can get your questions asked before the meeting, it's not necessarily so that you get those questions answered, but so that the questions can be answered at the board meeting and everybody can benefit from the answers to those questions. Typically, if one person has a question, somebody else does as well. And then focus on policy making, planning, and your goal setting, and I know you're going to be working on that tonight. Listen and be respectful at the board meetings, and I have seen you all do that, so I know that you were doing that. Confine your comments and your discussion to the motion that's on the table. Sometimes it's easy to kind of veer off and take a detour, and that's when the board president's responsibility is really to say, we're kind of taking a detour here. We need to get back to the motion that's on the table. So as I said, most of the time you adopt Robert's rules, and that ensures the rights of the majority, protects the rights of the minority, and it defends the rights of individuals, and it also safeguards members who are absent from the meeting. So that's pretty much why most boards use Robert rules. You treat one item at a time, extend that courtesy and fairness to all, be fair and consistent. Fair and consistent is what helps to build trust in that relationship. Majority rule, responsible board members support the majority decision. Sometimes if you're in the minority of a decision, it's not always the greatest place to be. And you want to be in the majority, but for some reason you feel that you're not going to vote in that way. We're not suggesting that you go out with pom-poms and run through the streets and talk about, hey, the majority opinion is this and we love it. But to respect the majority opinion of the board. And that's really difficult to do sometimes when you're in the minority. But if you can respect the majority opinion of the board, your staff, your students, your parents, and your community members can respect that majority. And also, with Robert's rules, it guarantees the rights of the minority as well. So which reflects your meetings? This is what I was speaking about just a few minutes ago. The community's perception of the board's effectiveness really does rest on the way the board meetings are held, and then their perception of how the district is run is also based on the way the board meetings are held and are conducted. So meeting procedures, no surprises. That means from board to superintendent, from superintendent to board. If you hear something on your way here, let somebody know, let the superintendent know, let the board president know. And likewise, if the superintendent or the board president hears something before the meeting that you need to be aware of, should be able to get in touch with you and let you know. The board president is going to recognize each speaker and give them the chance and the opportunity to speak. Discussion really should be confined to the question that's on the table, the question that you've had a motion first and a second, and then a discussion. So it should be kept to that motion. You want to really avoid using board members' names and just be professional and stick to the disagreement or to the agreement that's on the table. Try not to make things personally with each other. And I have not seen that happen here, so I think that that's a great thing that you're doing. And then during the debate, make sure that all questions and comments are directed towards the board president, not toward individual board members. Any questions so far? I'm hearing crickets. Remember, you're on stage. Now more than ever. Before COVID, you used to be on stage anyway, but most of our meetings were not televised or weren't recorded, and then the recordings put up on the website. So now you are. So we really very strongly ask that you not multitask, that cell phones be put on vibrate or turned off. If you know you have a situation that you may have to take a phone call for, let the board president know ahead of time. My child is sick, everything I think is okay, but if I get a phone call, I may need to step away from the dais. And then step away from the dais. You don't want to have that conversation at the board table with your family member, your spouse, or your parent, or your kids, or whoever. Really be mindful of your body language. People really pick up on that a lot, especially with the recordings now. You may be thinking about something that happened yesterday and making a deep sigh. You may be rolling your eyes about something that you thought about that happened before you came, but your community members don't know that, your audience members don't know that, and they maybe think that you're making those facial expressions about something that's being discussed. So really be careful about that. Support your board decisions. Even if you're in the minority, at least respect the authority of the majority of the board. Follow your protocols for communication. And in this packet, you do have the board superintendent communication piece, which is a couple of pages long, that you can take a look at. It's on the left-hand side, and I think it might be yellow, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, there it is, yellow. And so you may want to take a look at that and see if you do have protocols, identify whether you do have protocols for communication amongst each other, to the superintendent, from the superintendent to all of you, and then make sure that you follow those. And support district staff in the proper performance of their duties as well. Listen and be respectful, and always wait to be recognized before you speak. Chain of command. The chain of command is really important, and it's important that you know what it is for your parents and for your community members and for your staff or administrators. The chain of command for staff and administrators is outlined in their negotiated agreement, and it usually has to do with a grievance procedure or for them to go through. Typically, there's a building representative at each building that they would go to if they felt that there was a problem, and then it would go to perhaps the association leadership, and then it would go to the superintendent. You are the court of last resort. So when something's coming to you, it has not been able to be resolved throughout the chain of command. And typically what will happen is the superintendent will say, I have something that may be coming to the board table. I'm still hoping to be able to resolve it, but we may be bringing that to the board table. For parents and for community members, it's to the lowest level in the chain of command. So if it's a parent and it's a teacher that they have an issue with and they call you with that, you want to refer them to the teacher. Then if they don't feel that they get resolution from the teacher, they can go to an assistant principal or a principal, then to an assistant superintendent, then to the superintendent, and you would be the court, again, of last resort. But if you want to refer people to that chain of command, because that's the way things get resolved in the most expedient way. Typically, if somebody calls the superintendent with a problem, the superintendent's going to say, did you already talk to the teacher? Did you talk to the bus driver? Did you talk to an assistant principal? Go through that chain, because that's where it typically can be resolved the fastest. And then you want to be able to refer people through that chain. And you can let them know, it's not that I'm not interested or concerned about your issue, I am, but I can't do anything as an individual for you. So the best thing for me to do for you is to let you know what that chain is. And you can let them know what the whole chain is so that if they feel, they don't have to keep calling you back to say, okay, what's the next step? Also keep in mind that resolution doesn't necessarily mean that the person got what they wanted. It may mean that they understand why they can't get what they wanted. Okay? So sometimes that will happen also. And then after you've referred that individual to the chain of command, if they're calling you, let the superintendent know. I heard from Mrs. So-and-so today or Mr. So-and-so today. They had a question about their child, second grade teacher, fourth grade teacher, whatever, and I referred them to the chain of command so that the superintendent knows and can follow up with that if needed. Okay, so this is your chain of command. The board's advised of an issue that you have not solicited. So that doesn't mean you're going out to the ball fields or that you're going into the buildings and asking people for issues that they feel you need to be aware of. Okay, it's unsolicited by the board member, but a phone call comes to you or an email comes to you. You want to refer them to the lowest level in the chain and then notify the superintendent. Okay? So board member meeting responsibilities really are taking a look at that agenda beforehand. I'm sure you have electronic agendas now and don't get bogged down with the paper that I used to have binders of when I went to board meetings. And make sure that you do your best to get a chance to look that over before you come into the meeting. I tell a story about when I was first on the board, and within 6 months, we had April elections, and in January, we had hired a new superintendent. Our previous superintendent was retiring. And we had a lot of people in February and March that weren't opening up their packets before they came to the meeting. So do you remember the paper packets? Does anybody remember them? Okay, so they were sealed, you got it at your home or whatever. So the superintendent decided that he was going to take all of the hole punches from putting the papers into the binders that were in that big folder that we got, that big sleeve, and he was going to put them in the envelope. And that way, when we came to the meeting, if we opened up the board packet and pulled out our binder, yeah, it was really kind of an iffy thing to do, I'm not going to lie. You would get all of the little confetti from the holes from the paper, okay? My daughter was in a play at the Strand in Lakewood. And so it's a Friday night. I pick up my packet at the door before I drive to Lakewood to the Strand, and it's their first rehearsal, and the director has just gone through all of this. You know, this is newly renovated. Please don't drink anything. Please don't eat anything. You know where I'm going. Make sure that, you know, you don't leave any litter behind or anything like that. And we were going to be there for about 2 hours for their first rehearsal. And I said, I'm going to take a look at my packet. And so I opened up my packet and I pulled out the binder, and confetti went everywhere. And so for the next 2 hours, I literally was picking up those little dots. You don't want anybody to be driven to think that they should do that. So that's the point, is you want to be able to, and I had always looked at my agenda, and I said to the superintendent, the next time you better tell me, because I was in the theater and I spent 2 hours on my hands and knees on the floor. But I also didn't want to get my daughter kicked out of the play. It was their first rehearsal. So you want to try and make sure that you look through the packet. You may not be able to look through it as quickly as you want to, or as thoroughly as you want to, but try to get through the agenda at least, so that you know if there are action items that you have questions about. You can either send an email to the chair or to the superintendent or to the board president, so they get asked. That way they can come to the meeting with the answers and give everybody the answers, okay? Referring all questions or the need for further information to the committee chair, the board president, the superintendent before the meeting. Again, follow your agreed upon process for that, and no surprises at the meeting. When there are surprises at the meeting from the superintendent to the board can tend to look unprepared and can tend to look like they don't know what's going on, and vice versa. So if the board brings surprises to the meeting, instead of letting the superintendent know and the board president know ahead of time, everybody can look foolish. The thing that you don't want is to look like you don't talk to one another. You can talk to each other in between if you're going to miss a meeting, if you're going to be late for a meeting, if there's something going on that you think needs to be made aware of, you can certainly relay that information so that it can be relayed to everybody before they sit down at the meeting. The last thing you want to do is pull into the parking lot of a meeting when you think, we're going to be done pretty quickly, this is a pretty light agenda. First of all, don't ever think that, because that's the kiss of death. But you get here and there's 100 cars in the parking lot, and you know that there isn't anything else going on. So you know there's a lot of people coming to the meeting. And if there's somebody who knows about it, it would have been great if they told you, because your first reaction may be fight or flight. And we don't want you to do either one of those things. We don't want you to fight with anybody, and we don't want you to flee the meeting, because we need you here for the board meeting. So also, when you're asking the question ahead of time, you're giving the administrator or the person the time to prepare the answer, and to be able to do any kind of research that they may need to do that, to get you that answer. And it also avoids embarrassment. Not playing to the audience. This is really huge. A lot of times board members will decide that they're going to play to the audience for whatever reason, if they're being, if they're up for re-election or whatever. You need to think about what's in the best interest of all of the students in the Wall community, in the Wall Township community. And so that's what you need to focus on. You may come with a particular agenda or a favorite piece to your board work that you bring with you, but you always have to look. You can't be a specialist as a board member. You have to be a generalist, because typically you're going to need to vote on everything unless you have a conflict of interest. So you always want to be able to participate in your committee meetings as best you can, and to know what's going on so that you can respond appropriately. Make sure that your votes are thoughtful, that you know what you're voting on. If you don't know, if you think you need more time, you can ask for more time. The motion may need to be tabled if there are a number of people who aren't prepared to vote, to be able to get additional information. And but also there are times when you will need to take the superintendent's and respect the superintendent's recommendation for a particular item as well. And then conflicts of interest. I think we've talked about that before when we talked about ethics. Board members who have a conflict of interest would need to recuse themselves from the superintendent's evaluation, from any personnel matter, for anybody in the chain of supervision above their family member or relative, and also in negotiations. So you would check with your board attorney on that. I will also tell you that there's a recent, in our last school leader, there's an article about conflicts of interest and some new advisory opinions that have come out. So I don't know if you've seen that, but you may want to take a look at that as well, because it took it to a different level. Some communication tips. Superintendent by policy is the spokesperson for the district, and the board president by policy is the spokesperson for the board. The know and use your board communication protocols, and you have that sheet in your packet that you can go through and create those protocols with each other. It would be a majority rule or consensus, hopefully consensus and not just majority. emailed information should really be one-way information to somebody else. So if it's from the board member to the superintendent, it should be one-way. Information from the superintendent to the board should be one-way also. Never, ever, ever reply to all, okay? And if you have questions about that one-way information, call the sender so that you can do that by phone. Okay, some other communication tips is to use your district email address for all of your board communication. A lot of times, board members will have a district email address, but then they'll have that email address forward automatically anything that's district-wide to their personal emails. If you do that, and if your emails are Oprah requested, you would have to go through, your attorney would have to go through your personal emails as well. Okay, so always just use your district email. Don't use your personal email for anything that has to do with the board. And then be very careful when you're posting to social media. Again, there was just a recent article in School Leader. Hopefully you've all received that already. Recommend not having a board member social media account. Recommend not belonging to any private groups on social media unless it's something that has nothing to do with board business and you would be participating in that and never talking about board business. And then that you use the disclaimer while you're a board member, you're not speaking for the board, nor does your comment reflect the opinion of the board. And there was a ruling in 2020 that despite the disclaimer that was used, the SEC found that the content of the blog or of the social media post was such that even though the disclaimer was there, that the average person in the community would not be able to discern that the person was not actually speaking for the board. So we used to say, as long as you use the disclaimer, you're pretty much okay. But now the content of that information that you've posted may render that disclaimer meaningless. Okay, so be very, very careful. Just say no to social media. That would be my best advice. So just some closing thoughts. That's not easy to say together. You really are, board members communicate effectively when the board is working effectively. So when you're disagreeing with something, are you disagreeing with the person who's bringing that to the table, or are you disagreeing with the actual topic or the actual motion? And then do you treat your fellow board members the same way you would wish to be treated? Do you show the staff, the superintendent, and each other respect in public and also not in public? And then does your board govern in a civil and professional manner? Okay. What questions might you have? Yes.
I find when we go over this, it comes up a few times here, and it's always helpful and really clear. How do we remind the public of these rules on a regular basis so that meeting time is dedicated to the business of the meeting
Mm-hmm.
and not, just re-explaining the rules of the board? Do you have a suggestion?
So we actually put out a document in, I think it was 2019, 13 things board members wish the public knew about being a board member, and I'll send that to you. Excuse me one second. And a lot of districts have posted that on their website, on their board page. It is helpful because it does contain a lot of this information about public comments and about asking the board, individual board members for help and things like that. So that's one of the ways you can do that. The other is you can have that 13 items or 13 things, you can have that at your I'm so sorry. Yes, you can have it as a handout at your meetings as well. So I'll send that to the board president, to the superintendent, and then they can distribute it. And you can have that at your board meetings, and you can put it up on your website also. I think that would help a lot. Public comments is difficult because people really do believe that it's their chance to have this full conversation with the board. And typically boards have 3 or 5 minute intervals where the person can speak. And I see that you do that with your big clock. And that's good because the person here can see when their time is going, clocking down. And that's really important because your entire responsibility at a board meeting is to get the work of the board done. Because if you don't get the work of the board done that night, there are things that might not be able to happen tomorrow if the board doesn't get to those things. So you never want to be running really late. And I'm not saying to be disrespectful to the public, because that's not professional either, and that's certainly something that I would never advocate. But sometimes, you know, do you have a time frame on the public comment section in total? Okay, so what some boards have done is they've said, and you have one public comment meeting, public comments, you have the two, okay. So what some will do is they'll say that public comment section at the beginning, which is on agenda items only, so that gives you the opportunity to hear what the public has to say and wants you to consider when you're voting on those things. But that section, that initial section, won't last more than 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And so you would be able to have 10 people come up to the podium if it was 30 minutes, okay? And you'd be able to have 14 people come up if it was 15 minutes. And or 45 minutes, sorry. And that gives you the opportunity to be able to close that down. Now, if you have 100 people in the room and you have that half hour in your policy, and you know that you have a line of people behind you, somebody can ask to extend the public comment section. And I always suggest not extending it by more than 10 minutes at a time. Because then what you would also probably say is that we're going to ask, if you've already come to the podium, to please not come to the podium again until everybody else has had their opportunity. And if somebody has said what you planned on saying, please don't come to the podium as well. So only things that have not been already presented to the board. And that way you can, you know, because if you just do it by half hour, then, you know, that time can go by very quickly. And you can always extend it. If there's still a lot, if after the 10 minutes, there's still a lot of people standing, you can ask for another extension. So you can always do that. If there's a whole lot of people here that really need to speak to you, what you may want to do is say, you know what, we're going to have a special meeting just for the public to be able to speak to us about this particular item, because it seems like everybody that's here wants to address this one particular thing. Might be transportation, it might be grading, it might be report cards, it could be a number of things. And then make sure that you have that opportunity for them to just come and to be able to talk to you. So you could have that public comment section timed overall, in addition to timing individuals for 3 minutes, okay? That can help. Again, you're not trying to shut down anything. You're trying to make sure that you are able to get the business of the board done each night that you're in session and that you have action items to take care of. And so you can always extend it by 10 minutes at a time. You could do that 3 times if you needed to, if you felt that that was going to be, you know, what took care of everything, and gave people the opportunity to be able to tell you make the comments that they wanted to talk to you about. But the comment piece is the important piece, not the dialogue, because once you start a dialogue, now the time is completely gone. And being fair and consistent. I had, when my first night as a board president, we had our reorganization in May because we had April elections. Did I tell you this already? Probably not. And so it's my first time seated as the board president, and it's public comments, and we were timed also. They had 3 minutes, and somebody got up and talked about how wonderful everything was at the play and at the choral concert and with graduation and, you know, all of those kinds of things. And the vice president, I had said to the vice president, please tap me on the arm when the 3 minutes are up. And that didn't happen, and I wasn't paying attention to time, so I let this person continue to speak. The next person that got up was one of our association representatives, and we were in some contentious negotiations at the time. And so started to really talk about the negativeness of the board and, you know, how we're not resolving this and coming to the negotiations table. And so the 3 minutes were up, and now the vice president taps me on the arm. And I said, I'm sorry, but your 3 minutes are up. You would have thought that I had murdered somebody in the room. It was pretty impressive. I have to say. So I was taken to task for that, and I said, "You're absolutely right. Please continue," because she said, just because somebody was praising you, you let them go longer than 3 minutes, and now I'm not, and I'm giving you a hard time, and so you're going to contain me to 3 minutes. And I said, "You're absolutely right. Please continue. But I do promise you that this will never happen again. I will never let that happen again." And a couple of months later, I was going into the board meeting, so it was over the summer, and this person came over to me from the association, and she said, "I have to tell you, I gained a lot of respect for you that night." And I said, "What night?" I mean, it's 3 months later. I have no idea what they're talking about. And she said, "You said that it would," she reminded me of the incident, which didn't take much reminding, and because it was one of my very low points. And she said, "But you said it would never happen. You promised me that it would never happen again." And she said, you stuck with that. So you were fair that night in letting me continue to talk, but you've been consistent now with making sure that regardless of what somebody is saying, 3 minutes and they're cut off. So being fair and consistent is really one of the biggest things that you can do. And when you are that, people will recognize that, and they won't try and take more time because they're going to realize you're trying to give other people the opportunity to come up and speak too. And if you need to, you can always extend, but also know that you have the business of the board to accomplish tonight, or you don't have any action tonight. But in a meeting where you have action items, you need to get the business of the board done. So you need to be able to get through those. And hopefully it's before 11 o'clock at night or midnight. Other questions? Yes.
I had a question in talking about social media. You recommended that we not belong to any private groups. However, I'm a parent, and I get a lot of information about things that are going on in the schools, activities or this or that. Obviously commenting would be a problem, but do you see any issue with belonging to those groups, again, to get information relative to, my son's time here as a student?
That's fine. Just make sure that if you're commenting on something, that you say that while I'm a board member, I am not commenting for the board. This is my personal opinion, and it does not reflect necessarily that of the board or of the district, so that you can use the phrase that's in here. That's really important. And if you are a horseback rider, and you ride horses, and there's a horseback riders association in town or something, and you belong to that group, just don't talk about board business in group emails or in group social media posts, okay? Yes?
This is more a comment than it is a question. I just want the board to realize that as we redeveloped in January our conduct of the meeting, Ms. Friedman was very instrumental in giving us a lot of this information, and that is how we came to a lot of the changes that we made in conjunction with our Monmouth County Superintendent. So I appreciate all the input that you were able to give me, and we stay in communication. And if there's ever anything that you've got that you'd like me to relay to Ms. Friedman, or you'd like to contact her, she's been a pretty great resource for us.
Oh,
and I
thank you.
appreciate the help that you've given us. I'm hoping that we have continued to make some inroads into putting some of your suggestions into practice, and I'm hoping it's reflected positively and the community recognizes that the board is working hard to make our meetings professional so that we get our business accomplished. And I appreciate you reiterating that point as to what the purpose of a meeting is.
You're very welcome. And any of you can contact me, so you can shoot me an email or give me, call me up, and I try to get back to people within 24 hours. So hopefully, if you have anything, you can just call and shoot the breeze too if you want to. I always like to hear good things that are happening in districts. If there aren't any more questions, I'm going to thank you for everything you do for all of your students and your staff and for your community. Please stay healthy and stay well and stay safe over the summer. No sunburns. And I will see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Friedman.
You're welcome.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess. so that Ms. McCann can get set up for her portion of this retreat. And if any of the board members would like to grab something to eat, feel free. Thank you. Good evening and welcome back. Mr. Smythe, will you please do roll call for us?
Mr. Anizio?
Here.
Mr. Buffa?
Here.
Ms. DiGiovanni?
Here.
Ms. Hodnett?
Here.
Mr. Mallett?
Here.
Mr. Nasser?
Here.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Here.
Mr. Wondrak? Here. Ms. Stites?
Here. Dr. Handerhan?
Thank you, Ms. Stites. Before we move on to the next portion of this evening, I just wanted, there was some concern during public comment regarding not having an agenda posted this evening. I guess in October, we've been using board docs. It'll be 2 years in October, we've been using board docs. And for those of you that may not be familiar, it is an online tool. It's wonderful. And also, the agenda for this evening, if you click on 3A, you will see the agenda where certainly we kicked off the evening with a presentation and some training from Ms. Marianne Friedman. She is our New Jersey School Board's rep. And sticking with the agenda, we have this evening, you may recall, I believe it was in February, we did Ms. McCann, and also she was accompanied at that time by Ms. Daniel and Ms. Steiner, and giving a mid-year update on the district goals. Before we start, and I turn this portion over to Ms. McCann, I just want to just provide some context. The context is this last summer of 2022, the Board of Education, really during our retreats, we worked on developing district goals. And these district goals are, they're developed in communication with the administrative team. In some instances, faculty and staff are involved. And the Board of Education, it is a big portion of our responsibilities in creating district goals. And district goals really, they provide the North Star, certainly for the year, to which all of our activities point back to the district goals. So in February, as I was mentioning earlier, Ms. McCann and other administrators gave a mid-year update on the goal progress to date. Well, this evening, Ms. McCann is here to round out the rest of the school year, because while we had a whole lot to report out on in the wintertime, we have even more. It was a busy, busy, busy spring. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask Ms. McCann to really highlight for us some of the accomplishments of our district team in rounding out the district goals for the 2022-2023 school year. Ms. McCann?
Thank you, Dr. Handerhan. So as Dr. Handerhan mentioned, we set out in the beginning of the school year with 4 goals. One around academic and social emotional learning and support groups for our students, as well as continuing to engage in the facilitation of the strategic planning process for the 22-23 school year, and also ensuring that the preparation for a community awareness of the referendum vote in December of 2022, and last but not least, the fact that the district recognizes the need to enhance intra and inter-district communication. Each of these goals had subcategories parsed out into them that we have created or continue to do our programming and events and activities that support them. So within our first goal around our response to intervention, we had created in the beginning of the school year an intervention program planning committee. That committee had made recommendations throughout the course of the school year, and we have solidified on a new selection of course materials that will be used to support our intervention students, as well as creating a district manual that will will allow us to have consistency amongst all of the schools with the way in which we implement our intervention programming. And we have also made some scheduling changes for next year in how we implement our intervention program. Additionally, we've made some program changes, again, more along the lines of the scheduling and the materials that we'll be using.
pushing in versus pulling out our students. And also throughout the course of the school year from the last time we met, we had continued our services with integrated care concepts to ensure that we provided our students with the appropriate amount of counseling. One of our other components in this particular goal was centered around the mental health concerns of our students. And with that being said, a huge goal of Ms. Steiner's this year has been in selecting a resource and program for implementation next school year. The committee had selected 7 mindsets, which we mentioned at our last meeting. And with that being said, from February till now and continuing throughout the course of next school year, she has created a select district team, which that team will be the spearheaders of this implementation, as well as providing our administrators, our counselors, our paraprofessionals, and our specialists in K through 5 with training during our 2 PD days this past spring on May 30th, and then on the last day of school on June 16th. Additionally, from an academic component and to ensure that we continue to expose our teachers to the best pedagogical strategies for improving our students' needs, we have moved forward with our implementation of shifting away from Readers Writers Workshop and aligning more with the science of reading. So we also had a committee who recommended a new reading program for next year in grades K through 2, magnetic reading. The K through 2 teachers received training this past spring, and as well as our grades 3 through 5 teachers, we did not want to leave them behind, so they received training from the Reading League on the concepts of foundational literacy and the importance of being more systematic and explicit in that approach. Additionally, we have offered our teachers a 2-year course and commitment through a company called Letters, which is going to provide our teachers with, that decided to join, which was about 25 teachers in grades K through 5, with a very in-depth course on the foundational components of literacy to ensure that they understand the content that they're teaching along with the strategies within the magnetic reading program. We had our kickoff on June 1st, and they had their first monthly meeting on June 5th, bless you. And they will continue to have monthly meetings for the next 2 years, along with coursework and professional development along the way. Additionally, we can't leave out our math teachers and the importance of teaching mathematics appropriately. So we had worked with our teachers in grades, it says K through 5, but more likely our teachers in 2 through 5 to really look at our iReady data and also our state data to ensure that we were using the results and the information that they provide for us to really drive home our instruction and prepare them for our state testing. Our second goal is aligned to the strategic planning process. We had started this process last spring prior to my arrival, Dr. Hanrahan, but this past school year we continued the work. And during the spring, in May, we had created administrative focus area teams that worked along with Dr. Purnell, and they developed goals and our strategic plan action steps, our draft documents. Those draft documents were shared with the strategic plan task force in the beginning of June, which that task force then reviewed those plans and provided the district and teams with feedback for revisement and revisions. And then those plans were shared with each of our Board of Education committee meetings. And you'll get a sneak peek as to what the strategic plan could possibly look like in the next part of this meeting. The third goal for this particular school year is around the referendum vote. Thank you to all of our community members for your support in December and helping us pass the referendum. And now as we embark on starting the process of the referendum, we will continue to communicate with the community. At each of our board meetings, we are providing a finance and facilities update at the beginning of the meetings. And as well, we will be putting some information up on the referendum progress update tab on the website. so that you'll receive some of the financial summaries as well as what projects are upcoming. Our fourth goal was around our intra and inter-district communication. First part of that intra communication, and probably inter, it falls under both, is our district website. And I got to give a shout out to Heather Daniel for, clap, clap. We were selected after all of her hard work through the company that we were working with. We were chosen as a client national exemplar. They use our website during many of their trainings to show what it could possibly look like. And that was due to the hard work of many people, but led by Heather Daniel. In addition to that, we have some, I can't necessarily see all the numbers, but I think about 125,000, is that what it says? 125,000 unique users since launching our new website this past August, 1.4 million views and 3.5 million engagement events with about people visiting our website for about 3 minutes at each use. In addition to that, in order for that success, we needed to make sure that we provided the appropriate amount of professional development. So throughout the course of the year, we have expanded our efforts in making sure that different administrative staff members, as well as some of our other teachers and department leads, had the appropriate training in order to make this a success. And last but not least, the establishment of the communications pillar in our 3-year strategic plan, which again, you'll get a sneak peek in a little bit. Also within our communications goal for this year, it was centered around making sure that we had a bi-weekly newsletter called a SMORE, and each of our principals were charged with making sure that they sent these out. Kudos to them, because on average for each submission that was sent out, we've had over 500 viewers for each SMORE at each of the buildings. So congratulations to them. We also were focusing on our Facebook and Instagram pages this past school year, and we've had over 600 followers on each one, whether that be our Instagram or Facebook pages throughout the year. So we'll continue to work on it, but work in progress. And those are our goals and our accomplishments from the last presentation in February to now. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
I just have a couple comments. The document that you see in front of you is really in detail, really all the activities that the district engaged in throughout the school year to accomplish our established goals. I would be horribly remiss if I did not stress, highlight a ton of exclamation points in saying that last year we had a lot of lofty goals. It was a heavy lift for this district, for WTPS. We would not have accomplished what we did without everyone working as a team. We had a tremendous amount of support, certainly not, teachers, administrators, counselors. We had secretaries involved, our administrative assistants. We had our food services actively involved, custodial staff, custodial supervisors. We had, maintenance chimed in. We had so much involvement across the district. So we had truly both sides of the house, all of the oars going in the same direction so that we can accomplish as much. So I just want to give a heartfelt thank you to our WTPS family, because they did a tremendous job in helping us achieve our goals, our district goals. They were phenomenal. We had a tremendous amount of, throughout the strategic planning process, we had a tremendous amount of student involvement. We had community involvement. We had families involved, you know, and I want to thank all of them that came out to really, you know, provide feedback, provide really items for thought that perhaps the school leaders didn't really consider yet. You know, school districts serve their community, and I am so proud of how many hands were involved in really working towards the 2022-2023 district goals. It was a lot. The accomplishments of this school year's district goals will be on our website, on our district goals tab on our website. So they'll be posted by the end of the week. So I want to, for those of you that may be watching at home, I would like to invite really anyone to look at it, to see from a microscopic view of all the things that the district worked on. Now, that said, we want to continue the momentum that we built last year. And part of that is refining our strategic plan. We have been working on the strategic plan for quite some time. I would like to very much thank the strategic plan task force for their wisdom, their involvement. Really, they're distilling a lot of feedback, their participation in multiple community sessions with different groups across the community. So they worked very hard in really refining goals, refining objectives that will really take the district to the next level over the next 3 years. So I very much want to thank the Strategic Planning Task Force, and of course, you know, the Dr. Purnell for working with our administrators and working with the task force directly as well. That said, you also have, I believe you have another set. So thank you, Ms. McCann, for sharing all of our accomplishments from last year. So again, you have if you wanted to dig deep, this is certainly an item of discussion moving forward, but we really wanted to build on the momentum. So I'd like to move to the next segment of this evening's program, and that is looking at and providing an opportunity for our strategic plan goals and objectives. Now, as you know, we've been working through the drafts of the particular, I use buckets and for a lack of better term, but just to remind everyone that the strategic plan really is focusing on 5 distinct areas. The areas are academics, another area, wellness, another area, finance and facilities, another area, communications, and finally, the WTPS experience. And we're going to talk a little bit about specifically what that means. Now, throughout the last 2 weeks, you would have been provided with draft details of what we're calling action steps. And the action steps are the nitty-gritty activities. It's quite analogous to the report that Ms. McCann reported out on this evening, where we have our goals, we have our objectives, and the actions that we took to support the objective, to support the overarching goal. The same tactic is used for the strategic plan. Now, the action steps that you've had a chance for the last 2 weeks to peruse have been broken into the 5 different areas, and you'll notice that they are pretty granular. They're pretty specific. It is, for lack of a better word, a to-do list for the next 3 years for our school district. But this evening, I'd like to talk a little bit about, your impressions of the action steps that have been shared with you. But prior to doing that, I would like to just hone in on the goals and the objectives that set the table for the action steps. So in your packet this evening, you should have one of these. Okay, so we're going to talk about the graphic first. So on page 2, where it says Vision 2026, that is what Vision 2026, you might recall, is what we've named our strategic planning process. So our strategic plan is designed to be 3 years in length, hence 2026, so it'll carry us through the end of the 25-26 school year. So after distilling all of the feedback, working with our consultant on the strategic planning task force, the goal, the overarching goal for the academic portion of our strategic plan is as follows: foster a culture of academic excellence, innovation, and equity where students are provided with personalized learning experiences, rigorous curriculum, and supportive resources to achieve their full potential. So that is our overarching goal for academics. For wellness, cultivate the wellness of the WTPS community through intentional programming and supports focused on the physical, social, emotional, behavioral, and technological development of students, staff, and parents and guardians. Now, you might be intrigued with the title, the WTPS experience. When we started our journey, we initially described it as student life, a student life component. But as the feedback was distilled, and as we started working with the strategic planning task force, and as we started working with the administrators, it became bigger than student wellness. And part of it is really the family experience as they navigate their years through the Wall Township Public School System. So the WTPS experience, while it certainly speaks to student life, it also includes really parent life as a parent in Wall Township Public Schools. What does that look like? This year we had a few parent sessions where we had, almost like a back to school for parents, like a little mini parent university on various topics. Probably one of the most popular topics was, unpacking the cell phone, so parents understood, the concerns and of social media and their cell phones with their elementary and, in this case, the intermediate school students. So these are the types of programs that were really successful with parents this year, and we wanted to build upon that. We even had some grandparents attend so that they could learn, so that they can support their grandchildren in healthy social media, in healthy cell phone use. So, there was a huge clamoring for it, and we're excited to embark on that. There's also discussion of really events for both students and parents working on items together and learning together, which is a really neat concept that I'm very excited about. So that, really, we're looking to engage families, and we're also looking to engage community members too. So as you will probably note from the action steps, we're really looking to really provide an excellent, 360 school district that really, really welcomes parents and welcomes community members. Additionally, you also have access to our finance and facilities. The overarching goal is to practice fiscal responsibility while maintaining facilities for student learning in the 21st century, which includes clear and accurate reporting to the stakeholders. It was very clear through all of the feedback sessions from the community that we are incredibly grateful that the referendum was supported, and we're moving forward with some amazing, exciting capital projects. to really bring our schools, bring them up to another level and to address some needs that, we needed for some time. You might recall the referendum projects include boiler replacement, roof replacements, really tending to some exterior work. So I'm not looking to speak in detail about that this evening, but the message is the community wants updates. They want timelines. This was made very, very, very clear to all of us that were in the community sessions. At the end of the day, it's approximately $66 million, and our taxpayers, they want to see how the money's being spent. They would like information on which projects are coming down the pike sooner than later, and they want updates on our projects. We've mentioned at a prior board meeting that the sale of bonds did take place, and we'll be talking more about that tomorrow night, I'm sure. So there's just an awful lot of preliminary work that has taken place since our referendum vote back in December. We've been incredibly busy behind the scenes, and we're starting to, we'll be getting to some nice actionables that we'll be able to share on the district's referendum tab. So what came across loud and clear is we want to see and we want to be updated on what is going to happen with the referendum planning. So that was probably the greatest ask from our community, and that's something that we certainly had every intention on meeting that need to begin with. So before I move on to communications, I believe I did not share with you the overarching goal for the WTPS experience. So strengthening engagement and expand opportunities that foster a sense of belonging and purpose through inclusive experiences that promote positive peer and community relations. Our fifth and final area of focus for the strategic plan is communications. Throughout every community session, with every feedback form that we had, communication was identified as a priority for our 3-year strategic plan. It is no surprise because that was very much a priority for our 2022-2023 district goals. Our communications, we're not going to achieve, communication goal, it did not start, nor is it ending with the 2022-2023 school year. Our communication goals are ongoing because that's something that we continually need to improve upon. We had the opportunity through this process to get a great deal of insight from parents, from students, from staff members on how they hope to engage in communicating with the school district. We did receive a tremendous amount of feedback on our school website, a great deal of feedback on this year, the relaunch of our Facebook pages, and the maiden launch of our Instagram. These are essential pieces to essential tools for our communication in the school district. We also received a lot of positive comments about the school newsletters used through the S'mores platform. Some of the feedback that we did receive from the community and from the parents is, we want you to build upon that because it was so awesome. We want that to grow. And that's something that we're looking to do. We also, some of the feedback we received from the parents in particular is targeted communication and platforms that can remind us of specific things pertaining to you specifically. Perhaps your child is on a soccer team, then you want direct communications specific to soccer. So those are the types of things that this upcoming strategic plan will certainly be working on. So on the next page, you will see that we have each of the 5 areas, the 5 pillars we're calling them, and the goals that I just reviewed with you, And then in the goals, we have specific objectives to support the goals. Would you be able to put the goal sheet on? That's terrific. Okay, so just in case you needed to see it a little bigger, we have specific objectives. And again, these areas, our decision-making, our planning will be pointing back to our goals, pointing back to our objectives. And you have had the opportunity to review the intended action steps. It is lofty. In working with people that are familiar with strategic plans, whoa, you guys are looking to accomplish a lot. Well, we are. This past year, we accomplished a lot, and we want to build upon that momentum. We have, coming out of the COVID years, we have a lot of student needs that we need to address, our staff needs that we need to address. We're excited to build our professional development. We're excited this year to launch the curriculum endeavors that we've spent this year really gearing up towards. We're excited about these projects. And I will say that our staff is excited to get started on them. So it is, we have a lot of great momentum. We want to capitalize on it. And it's an exciting time in Wall Township. And, we're up for the task. We're ready to go. I would like this opportunity to hear some feedback about the intended action steps that you've had a chance to review, and also the goals and the objectives, if there's any questions on the goals and objectives, or if you have any questions about the strategic planning process itself. So I would like to have an open dialogue, if you'll indulge me in this process. So I welcome any questions at this time. Comments?
Dr. Handerhan, so do you have any preference as to where
Nope.
we start?
No, I do not.
So I'm interested in terms of the WTPS experience, in terms of, do we have any ideas, or where are we going? What well are we going to in terms of getting families and also the general community involved? People who may not have kids involved in the schools at this time, but may in the future or already have. What are we doing in terms of that kind of engagement process? Yes.
Okay. Well, there's been a lot of discussion on that, and a great deal is the onus is on us to reach out to the community. We have had some community outreach this past school year. For example, we have offered the veterans in town the opportunity to attend Wall High School events free of charge. They have a ticket, and I am thrilled to share that so many of our veterans in town, they have those that did not receive them through the town's veteran breakfast. They contacted our offices. They received the cards. Several attended our musical productions and our concerts. And this type of engagement, this was really a test balloon to see how we can interact with the community. That was a positive. We were able to use this opportunity to ask, what can we do more? Certainly we were able to ask the veterans because we had reached out. And, when we took back some thoughts, if people in the community are not parents, sometimes they don't feel welcome into the school district. So one of the ideas that came across in working with our group is to provide opportunities. There was discussion perhaps on having a reach out to the senior communities, and before perhaps our the matinee for the musical, have a spaghetti dinner type of thing and the students organizations can run these events. There were discussions of, because we have such an amazing arts program in this district, whether it's the art shows or the concerts, having dessert night to engage the community. Cheesecake and, strings. I don't know, I'm making that title up. But these are the types we want to reach out. We have wonderful, wonderful students. We have wonderful advisors. And there are so many things that we can actively do to invite the community in. There have been discussions on, really, I mentioned a little earlier, like a mini parent university. And there are some hot ticket items of interest that parents really want to learn about, grandparents want to learn about, and these would be open to the community. In particular, probably what we're kicking off right now is Ms. Steiner is incredibly deep in rolling out the 7 mindsets. 7 mindsets, she has reached out to parents, and there will be some community opportunities, but really doing a book club in the summer months. That will be kicking off shortly, where parents can really become intimately aware of what their students are going to be working on for the upcoming school year and beyond. So there are several different parent and community engagement opportunities coming down the pike. Another item that this came out loud and clear during the feedback sessions is we have amazing extracurricular opportunities for our students at the intermediate school, amazing opportunities at the high school, but what about our elementary? What about our elementary students? Do we have student government for our elementary students? Do we provide for a student newspaper, let's say, at the elementaries? The parents are interested in it. The students brought it when we met with the students. The 4th and 5th graders, they wanted clubs. There was some discussion on, someone even recommended a chess club. I love the idea. Some other kids, kind of weren't so thrilled. But hey, but our point is, we need to look to see what type of extracurricular activities that we're providing for our elementary. One of the action steps is to develop a committee with elementary educators and parents, and where appropriate, some 4th and 5th grade students to identify some areas that they may want to grow in extracurricularly. So there's a lot. These are the types of, we're engaging students, and there's definitely a need for elementary to engage them. There is a need to engage parents. There is a need to engage community members, and we recognize that. And we do recognize that the onus is on us. They're not just going to come to us. We have to provide activities. We have to provide a concerted plan to reach out to them, and that onus is on us, because schools are a product of its community, and that's really important. And you can be a very active member of the Wall Township Public Schools community and not have children in the district. Are there any other comments, questions? I know if you're certainly we discuss so much in the committee work. We've had, and if you're on the curriculum and instruction committee, we have a whole lot coming down the pike as far as some exciting things. So we can certainly talk a little bit about that in depth tonight. Well, Ms. Hodnett, it looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, so I love the vision, and I was saying in curriculum and instruction that I've had an exceptionally busy work period, so I wasn't able to dive into it as much as I wanted to, and I took time to do that. So I think the buckets that you call them are just like really smart, and a way to capture everybody in the community that connects to the school. I find one thing that I'm noticing under academics is we have objectives. So there's a goal, and then there's 3 objectives for each one. And I see that the objectives for academics are related to improving student outcomes, which is great and makes complete sense. Then there's one for inclusivity, and then there's one for improving our data analysis practices. So I know that that's directly related to IDEA and RTI.
Yep.
So all of that is wonderful. The one thing I noticed is, in looking at our student numbers, we have 3.5% of our population is students with disabilities, 10% of our population
are students that identify as other than white, right? And I know from looking at testing data from last year, and we have testing data coming up this year, we're still missing the mark on some of our subgroups.
Yes.
And there's no mention of identity or culturally responsive practices anywhere in this document. And my concern is that it's a 3-year document. And I worry that if we're not continuing to think of how we reach learners that challenge our schools, those numbers will continue to show up.
Yeah, there is, that is an absolute priority. In fact, it's, the topic is one of our administrative retreats in August. We actually have speakers coming in to really help help and really provide us some insight into working with students of color from a disciplinary standpoint and from a learning standpoint.
I even think of like just, I
Right.
noticed on our testing data with our Hispanic population, you know, thinking about language and how we incorporate that into the school. I see it as missing.
Okay,
in this.
because it's, we tended, the wellness is an umbrella that is, when we were writing the document, we were looking towards this as part of wellness. So what I'm hearing is you would like that represented in the academics column in addition to the wellness.
I don't see it in wellness either.
Okay.
I attended the 7 Mindsets.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was in May. I attended.
Okay.
I thought it was a really, really well-run training, and there were stakeholders from, you know, community. Again, there were parents there that were super excited about it. I sat with administrators, teachers, counselors. So I see like that social emotional piece present. I just don't see any mention of identity.
So you'd like us to come up with something explicit and include it in the academics portion? Explicit.
Yeah, and I wanted
To the
be-
subgroups.
I think so.
Okay,
I
that's
think
great.
Because they're going to continue to show up on testing
We can
data,
absolutely do
and
that.
we're going to have to keep being responsive to it.
Yep, we can
Okay.
absolutely do that. That
Thank
is
you.
not a problem. That's why we're here. Yes, Mr. Mallon?
Okay, thank you. I think it was a great presentation. Regarding academics, I just want to, regarding the goal, the part of the goal that says where students are provided with personalized learning experience, and then right after that it says rigorous curriculum. Is there a process in place by where teaching staff can meld those two things together? Because, you know, sometimes, you know, a personalized learning experience may not necessarily go along with a rigorous curriculum unless there are some, you know, some training involved that the teachers can, you know, can bring about some kind of an individual, you know, strategy for those students to achieve the same kind of success that other kids might be able to achieve just by sitting in a classroom and taking everything
No,
in.
you're 100% correct. The rigor, it is, the personalized learning is challenging each student to really achieve their, really it's really a personal best. I'm going to ask Ms. McCann to chime into this to really kind of shine some of the professional development opportunities that did take place this past school year, because one of by moving to this new reading approach, we will be able to really address individual needs while really developing the rigor coming down the pike. So I'm going to turn this over to you.
Okay. So similar to what Dr. Hanahan is mentioning, the personalized learning experiences coupled with the curriculum. So when we think about personalized learning, it's more of really meeting all of the students in where they are, not necessarily sending them off to have to go learn on their own, but within our multi-tiered support systems, providing the students with the appropriate, whether it's tier 1 interventions, tier 2 interventions, or tier 3 interventions, but also making sure that our curriculum and our expectations stay high for all of our students. So with that, with bringing in our new reading program in K-5, it really allows us to do that in terms of bringing all of our students to the carpet, to the table, to have all of the same experience. But then when we break them out into groups, in bringing more intervention strategies into the students who may not have understood or don't grasp onto those foundational concepts. And then the students who are in the middle group or our average students, challenging them in a separate way. And then our high flyers being able to really take them to the next level and applying their knowledge of what they had. So although we're meeting each of the students in each of their groups in a particular manner. We're still providing them with their personalized learning experience and bringing them to the next step. In terms of mathematics, we've really been working with the teachers this past year on a similar approach in moving away, bringing all of the students to the carpet. They get their whole learning experience there, and then again dividing the students into groups and really honing in on the fact that we need to start providing those interventions in class and expanding the students and enriching and challenging the students who can be challenged, but also helping the students where they are and providing them with the appropriate assistance and support that they need in the classroom versus taking them out of the classroom to get that. So again, the committees that met with the RTI process were even taking that same approach in our secondary experience moving forward. So our interventionists will be pushing in to provide those supports, but yet the gen ed teacher will be able to take the students to the next level that can go to the next level in both the intermediate and in the high school. Does that answer?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm happy to hear that, you know, there's going to be efforts made. You divide it into the three groups. I'm especially happy to hear that, you know, efforts will be given to those who are achieving at above, to even, you know, to go to
Can't
even
forget
to
anybody.
greater levels. And, you know, I think I know the answers, but I'm going to ask anyway. You know, at what point and where do you identify who are in these
Each of those
specific
groups.
groups?
So the teachers, we have data teams within each of the buildings that will meet this. They're meeting currently as we speak in different pockets at the elementary level. Intermediate and high school will meet more closely towards August. But they take multiple measures of data and analyze that data to determine who falls into which different tier, whether it's tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 in terms of the supports that are needed for the students. That data is then reviewed in September after we give our universal screeners, because that's one more piece of information, and it's ongoing and revised. So just because Jen McCann may be in a tier 2 intervention for one particular unit in mathematics in the first marking period, after the teachers review the data, I may come out of tier 2 and go into tier 1 for the next marking period. It's a fluid and flexible grouping for our students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to add something that I'm particularly excited about, and it might also provide a little more context. At the high school level, we do have some dual enrollment opportunities. That's where students can take college credit and receive high school credit at the same time. Part of the strategic plan for the high school is to expand dual enrollment opportunities, and the dual enrollment opportunities that I'm certainly biased towards, and it's where the students do not leave the campus. The students they would stay at Wall High School, and we would have teachers that would also serve as adjuncts for the college. So they would be teaching the course within our school walls. And the exciting dual enrollment is probably one of the things that I'm most excited about, because it is an opportunity for kids to earn significant college credits in the hand, not gearing up for a test that happens in the first 2 weeks of May. And if they do well on the test, then they get the credits. Like, this is credits in hand from universities, state universities. This is an opportunity for our kids to really propel their studies. Certainly, parents and students can save a whole lot of tuition dollars, and you know, I think we're all on the same page with that goal. If you can save tuition money, you do it. But it also saves time. So many kids can leave high school with getting, let's say, world language requirements for the liberal arts requirements done before they even graduate high school, math requirements, English requirements. So there are a lot of things that we are able to refine and build upon and establish dual enrollment relationships with universities, so our kids would be positioned that way. Oftentimes, students, because if they're able to walk into college with, you know, credits in their pocket, it's a lot easier to double major because they have taken care of so many of the other you know, core courses. And this is something that, you know, I would love to, I'm just so excited to see where this is going to take us, because I personally in my career and as a parent have seen the advantages of dual enrollment programming. And, you know, that's, and it's something that really supports students in whether they're in honors classes, AP classes, if they are a student that is trying, you know, maybe a language for the first time for college prep programming. It's geared for many, 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 many students. It's not just students that are in the AP program or in the advanced honors program. So this is something that, you know, we're excited about. I know we're excited about talking to the C&I curriculum about it and sharing this with students and parents as the year unfolds. So stay tuned on that, because that's one of the action steps that the high school is really excited about.
I had a question. In talking about the tiers you were just discussing, 1, 2, and 3, are you going to be communicating that information with the parents? Because that's one of the complaints I had as a now no longer elementary school mom was one of the things that frustrated me was not really understanding where my son stood vis-a-vis what tiers he was in. And I'm looking forward to maybe getting that information. Now he's going to be in the intermediate school. So I'm hoping that as you develop this program, you have more communication with the parents about where their kids fall.
That's great feedback, thank you. In most cases, if the students are receiving services from an interventionist, that parent communication on an ongoing basis definitely takes place. But sometimes for students who may bounce in for a unit and bounce out, that may not necessarily always occur in given situations, but definitely great feedback, so thank you.
Ms. Hodnick?
I think this question is for Jennifer, and if it's not, then
Okay,
bounce
no
it.
problem.
So
We're in stereo.
for the first for the second objective under academics, which is cultivate a culture of inclusion, responsive to students' needs, there's research best practices as part of year 1, and then there's a group identified. You're identified on every single thing. I was saying the other day you're going to be very busy. Can that be shared at curriculum and instruction meetings as like the research is happening? I don't know like what the structure of that approach is going to be.
Of course. So the intent behind that is really talking with the interventionists and with our school administrators as to what are the best practices for a given group of students. Because what we may find is beneficial in one building, the demographics and the population may look, and the needs of the students may look different in another. So we need to have, as we all call it, our teacher tool belt, and make sure that we're providing enough strategies and tools for all of the teachers across the board. But we could definitely do updates throughout the course of the year at C&I.
Yeah, and then I just have one more comment. I really love that under year 1, and it continues on through, under that same objective, we're really thinking about like our needs requiring in-district programming for students with disabilities. It was something I brought up like the first year I was on the board as like surprising
It's critical.
how many students were leaving the district for services, and I'm noticing the change, and it's nice to see it prioritized on this plan.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a passion of Ms. Baum's as well. So we'll be all working very closely to ensure that we provide those necessary resources and programming.
And then the last little celebration is I see unified sports on here, which is great.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that was great.
Oh, yes. That was, you know, that was a great day. We're going to build on that. Building on it.
Dr. Handrahan, would this be a good time to discuss communication?
I think it would.
Okay. So obviously, I am tremendously impressed with the work that's been done by district staff on our website. I think we can probably all agree that there have been improvements, leaps and bounds, and I hope our community, including if you don't have children in the district, because anyone can access the Wall Township Public Schools website, and we welcome them to do so. Those strides forward have been incredible. I also think that the s'mores newsletters that are being performed at every school, it's been a great undertaking. Many of them are outstanding, and there is certainly opportunity to continue to bolster them. I also think that we as a board also have opportunities to potentially improve our communication, and I do believe that I'm not speaking out of turn, and if I am, anybody can feel free to jump right in here. I do think that this board wants to communicate with our public, and I do think I've kind of floated out some feelers for interest if folks would be interested in participating potentially on a communications committee, be it an ad hoc committee, where we have the opportunity to respond. Communication has been a challenge, and I think that we're doing a lot of work to respond and rise to that challenge. That being said, I think that at any given time, several of us can be frustrated because we feel like information or questions may be posed that we don't necessarily always have an opportunity to adequately answer in the moment, in a meeting. And I'm wondering if maybe people have an interest in kind of participating on an ad hoc communications committee where we could potentially take certain questions that might be posed and answer them maybe via the website, through different statements that we've made to the press, where those press statements can be put on the website. This is not something that should be coming strictly from the president of the board, meaning while the president is the spokesperson for the board, I would never speak on behalf of the board without kind of floating that through our membership. Because again, when I speak, it needs to reflect us as a whole. So I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts, and we can talk about this here, and we can also, continue to kind of formulate what this would look like. But I think it might be valuable to kind of formalize a committee now so that we can continue to try to answer questions or concerns that may come up. Because I think that what I personally find difficult is when there's a void of information, that void will get filled. And my preference is that that information is filled with correct and accurate information as opposed to misinformation, be it mistaken potentially. Unfortunately, sometimes it's constructed, and that's not really helpful for our community as a whole. If people are going to be making decisions or supporting initiatives, they need to have a sense of where we as the board truly are coming from. So I think this might be one area that, in the spirit of the communication pillar, that we as a board may be able to extend ourselves. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on an ad hoc communication committee, if anybody wants to talk about it.
We had something very similar during the referendum process with the PR firm and having the centralized website. Questions come in, they'd get disseminated to whoever was best able to answer it, because sometimes it would be for an administrator, sometimes it was best fit for Dr. Hannerhan, and it go back and then had a single source going back out. So, and it proved pretty successful in trying to counter some of the disinformation that was out there. It also helped to let the community know that we were responsive and we're listening to any of the comments that were coming in. So I know I'd definitely be interested in doing something like that, just because I've seen it. I've seen the positive outcomes that it can really have.
But communications is it's something that's not going away, that we continually need to strive to improve. And I think, Mr. Nazar, that I think that was a great point, because it was as centralized as it could be, so it didn't, and it was tended. It was monitored, so we were able to be as extemporaneous and responsive as we possibly could. Some questions required deep homework on multiple staff members and professionals, especially with respect to some of the financial questions. But but there was a response that, hey, we're working on it, and we will share it with you when we get the response. So
It seemed the format and the structure of it really worked well, considering all that was going on.
Would you mind talking a little bit, because that sounds interesting, and I'm, like, when you said it, I was just thinking of, like, would this be in response to a meeting, like, reflecting on the meeting and thinking about where, responses need to be? Is it for emails? Is it for, and I'm sure maybe TBD, right?
Sure, I think it's probably going to be a little bit of a work in progress. Again, I am not looking to necessarily distribute the responsibility to other members of the district, because clearly they have a pretty weighty list of things to accomplish. This is more something that we can potentially, from the board, okay? These are things that maybe the board wants to address. Potentially questions or concerns or comments that are made during a meeting, or things that we hear in the community, that we think maybe could be addressed and potentially redirect some of the energy so people recognize. Sometimes I think things may be not accurate, and then people are concerned. And listen, I'm gonna keep it vague right now, but I don't want to see people unnecessarily upset or concerned about things that may be said as truth, they think is truth and is not. I'd like to have an option or an ability to say, listen, this is where the board stands on this topic. And all we can do is be honest about where we stand as a board on a topic, and then people can choose to believe that or not. But sometimes I feel like we're kind of missing that opportunity. And I would like to have an opportunity, again, not to speak for the district, I'm talking for the board, as the board would like to, and again, we're not gonna run amok here, but, just that when there's an opportunity, sometimes it's very straightforward. And I think we can get frustrated because we see people getting something that becomes very convoluted and confusing, and it's not. And I'm not going to get into specific examples right now because we're just looking for moving positive and a positive forward motion. But I think just a little blurb, this was something that came up, and this is where the board stands on it. I think that might help our community in general. Gives us a little bit more of a voice.
Hi. One thing I think that I would maybe add to that is the idea, and I think this goes without being said, but I think that when somebody is presented with an opportunity to meet with the committee of the board, that they're somehow going to think that we're going to give them information that we can't give out to the public anyway. So I think lots of times when there becomes issues within the district, it's because, we can't talk about different things, whether it's personnel or student matters or different things like that. I think that in the drafting of it, it's important, I think, sort of to be clear with that, because I think that some people may think of it as an opportunity just to be like, oh, well, let me find out what's going on here or there. Not that anybody would ever do that anyway, but I think that just when you put it out to the public, Kristen was saying, there's lots of those 13 different things that the public should know about, like Board of Education rules.
I signed up for it. It's like, it's helpful to know what the role and if it was like something we provided, like we're always trying to find these moments to share, and this could be a place maybe where
That's my little.
Well, I'd just like to make a comment on behalf of athletics, wellness, the Wall Township experience. You meet your neighbors. It's not only on the school teams, it's the other teams, the biddy basketball, the Little League, and you get to know people, and everybody gets to know people at those events. And the spaghetti dinner and the chess tournament. And that's where you get to know all the people and what's going on in your schools. And I just think it's so important. So when people try to demean that, yeah, you're always going to have incidents of some type. But when people try to demean that, they don't realize, we talk about communications, and people, I mean, when you have a bunch of kids, and you're running around, you drop this one off here, get that one there, this one's got to eat, that one's got to do this. It's a busy week in Wall Township. So I just give a shout out for athletics, and I really like I like the school teams, but I also think that we forget about the other teams and the other type of activities that are going on. Because just go around to these fields on a Saturday and a Sunday, and go over to the Lions, their egg sandwiches, and look at the lineup for that. It's there, you know. We should nourish it. It's a great experience for somebody.
Okay, are there any comments at this point with respect to the strategic plan, draft, action steps, the goals themselves? Because what I would like, as far as I want to talk a little bit about next steps, if there's something after this discussion you wanted to have a chance to revisit some of the action steps that you reviewed prior to coming this evening, please do so. If you please call me, send me a note by next Monday if you'd like me to include something, or adjust something. Right now, I have the inclusion of subgroups in the for a revision in the academics. Are there any other at this table tonight? I invite you to reach out to me by the end of business day on Monday, a week from tonight, because I'll be able to distill that, because the next steps is working with Dr. Purnell, because we need to take the goals, we need to take the objectives and the mammoth list of action steps, and we have to refine it to really a user-friendly document that we would want to bring to the Board of Education for approval. And one thing I will share, typically at this meeting, that's when we hammer out our district goals. So it would be for the 2023-2024 school year. After we finesse and do the final revisions to the strategic plan, you'll notice that within each goal and objective, there's year 1 activities, there's year 2 activities, and year 3 activities. We will collect all of the year 1 activities and compile them on one document, and they will be our district goals for the 2023-2024 school year. So that's how this strategic plan will be used primarily as an organizational tool for us, because so for this 24-25 school year, for the second year, all the year 2 action steps to support the objectives and goals will be our district goals, and that's how that will work. So this is an important document because it's shaping our district goals for 3 solid years. And you'll notice that many build upon one another because some things need to be studied, planned, and then the following year they would be executed. And then after that, we would have to, debrief on some actions, refine as needed, and, bring it 2.0 the following year. So it is designed with that intent. And I don't know. I for one am super excited about what's in store for us. I'm particularly excited about all of the curriculum endeavors that are, there's a whole lot of planning that went on behind the scenes that will be realized next year. And poor Miss McCann must be exhausted. As you can see by this document, and her team is just, it's a lot. It's a lot. And, I joke, but there's a tremendous amount of momentum that we want to capitalize on. And I will tell you that there are so many wonderful things that happen in our schools and offices every single day. And, at the risk of sounding like the positive police over here, there's some good stuff. And we want to build upon that. We want to share that. We want to share that with the town. We want to share that with Monmouth County. We want to share that with the state of New Jersey and beyond, because there's some amazing things that we have incredibly talented people here. We have amazing students, and we need to always keep that at the center of everything that we do. Yes, Ms. Hodnett. Absolutely. So this is really the beta, if you will, because what you'll notice that we have icons. Ms. Daniel has been very busy scripting some icons. So what we want to do is we want the document itself to be very interactive. So if you are on for the academics to hit the icon, you would be able to get all of the actionable everything done and we'll release it yearly. So you'll be able to see exactly what the schools are up to, and how we're working together to best educate our students. So yes, exactly. Right. So we do want to have an interactive strategic planning document that's going to be, it'll be live. It'll be a live document on our website. And it will be just continually updated and, progress indicators on where we are. So we want to communicate that. I will say for the referendum, because communications were very specific, the communications for the referendum are very specific. The referendum tab on our website will remain. So we'll have updates through the strategic plan, but we will have updates, documents, pictures, and the referendum page itself will be the landing pad for those types of updates. And those updates will be, when we have, things to take pictures of, which we hope to soon by the end of the summer, we'll be able to post them on the social media, send them in parent communications, and then staff communications. Click here to see the latest updates, and we'll be going back to. So the website was designed with that intent to be really the landing pad, and our strategic plan will certainly be a huge part of that, and we want it to be a living document by design. So those icons that Ms. Daniel sifted through so many different examples, you'll be able to see them, and they'll become synonymous. So you'll be able to see. Another place where you'll be able to see them is our budget planning, because when you have an active strategic plan, we will be mapping our budget to how it links back to the strategic plan. So the last couple of years, with COVID, it really derailed the former strategic plan. So here we are, we're starting again, and you will see how really when we have the budget workshop presentations, usually they're in this room. When we're here in the winter months, you'll be able to see how everything's linking back to the different aspects of the plan. Any more questions? So just to recap, please, if you have any revisions that you would like or inclusions, or questions, please reach out to me by end of visit day on Monday, because I will be refining the document once again, sharing it with Dr. Purnell so he can create a very user-friendly document and include some of the things that would be in the early chapters of a strategic plan, meaning, some of the some of the responses from the community to highlight really how it was shaped. So that will be included as well. So, so I'm getting excited. We're almost there. We're almost there. But please, if you can use a fresh lens, go back to the action steps, because it's a lot. There's a lot of specific pieces. And I hate to give you guys homework, but I give it to you every week. So by the end of business day on Monday, if I can have all of your feedback, I'd appreciate it.
And also to please
Yes.
leave the
Oh,
board effectiveness worksheet.
yes.
Evaluation sheets. I'll
Ta-da.
collect them at the end.
Oh, that's not it.
Thank you.
Listen. Ta-da. Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, I think that completes our business for this evening. May I have a motion, please, for adjournment?
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Sanfilippo, may I have a second? Mr. Adonisio, all in favor? Aye, thank you, and we'll see you all tomorrow night.